that was something that I had to learn as a coach, that I would find myself saying the same thing over and over again to players. And then I thought, well, why aren't they, well, I'm not teaching them. And so it doesn't matter if I know it. It matters if my players can know it and execute it.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast, where we interview coaches and leaders to find out not just what they do, but how they do what they do. Becoming the best version of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we are joined by the head boys basketball coach of Prestonwood Christian Academy, Jeff Clarkson. In 19 years as a head coach, Coach Clarkson has 377 career wins. He's been named Coach of the Year 5 times, and in 2011, 2012, he led the Naaman's Forest Rangers to a state Final Four appearance. In his first year at Prestonwood, Coach Clarkson led the Lions to a state finals game in 2019-20. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
How are you?
What's up, man?
Good. How are you?
You look good.
I didn't shave for this. Is that okay?
Well, I mean, you look rugged,
Yeah.
manly.
Well, thank you. That's what I'm trying to do, make up for some things, But hey, I brought some black coffee because I watched Wes Watson's podcast.
Wes Watson.
So ever since that podcast, I am all about straight black coffee.
A little bit of backstory with you and I, just for whoever cares or wants to know. But I've known you for about 15 years now. And so Coach Clarkson was the guy that gave me my high school coach called him, begged him to hire me at Naaman Forest 15 years ago as a volunteer varsity assistant. And I taught out in the portables. But Jeff, I do want to thank you just for giving me a chance and getting me started with this journey here.
Well, that wasn't a hard decision. Anytime you could get a volunteer varsity assistant who has the career that you had in college and high school, and then also a little overseas experience, that brings immediate street cred for the guys. And it was great to have you there. I wish you could have stayed longer, but nobody left my staff, and you got a great opportunity to go work for a great guy. So I had to let you go. You had to set me free.
hardest thing you've ever done. But no, I it was a special year. Just the relationship with you and Cole Johnson that we were able to to build, and I learned a ton from you, and also the character and the person that you are was really huge for me to be around at such a young age. When I was off the floor, had some stuff going on. So you were huge. But in the same way that Wes Watson taught me to have black coffee, you also taught me a very valuable lesson. So for any coaches out there that are varsity assistants dreaming to be head coaches one day, what Jeff Clarkson taught me was we're at a tournament in the hospitality room, and we're taking some food and things. And I only took one brownie. Only one. And Jeff looks over at me and he says, Matt, if you want to be a head coach one day, you take 2 brownies. 2 brownies.
Yeah, that's important. You got to take full advantage of the hospitality room. I mean, it's pretty much everyone for themselves. If you got the early game, I mean, you got to get in there and get the good stuff, when it comes. You got to figure out the timing. You got to figure out who's running that thing and when the good food's showing up. I mean, there's some important things you got to know when you're playing in a tournament. So,
see, people think that when you get on staff and you're brand new, you just learn X's and O's, but you really learn life lessons.
That's right.
That's important. So you and Wes, black coffee, 2 brownies, but 15 years of friendship. We've been able to play basketball together. You're one of the best shooters that I've ever played with, and I mean that. And you can still hoop, which is, I guess, kind of the most frustrating thing is that as I can't really play anymore, you're still going strong.
Well, I don't feel like it when I'm out there. I feel really old because I need to just graduate up to the old guys, and keep trying to play with those young guys, and they stay the same age, man. They don't get.
You got to go 40 and over league now. 40 and over.
We did that in one league, but I went back down to the JCC, man, where you and I have some great memories.
Yep.
Those are some younger guys down there.
Culture is thrown around that word quite a bit. And I was able to see your culture at Naaman Forest and be a part of it for 1 year. And then you went to Plano East and built something special there. And now at Prestonwood. So you've been at least 3 different, you're at the Colony for a little bit. So 3 different job places as a head coach, building cultures at each place. So what are some of your favorite activities that you have?
Well, since I've come to Prestonwood, my favorite activity to kind of help with that is to do a team retreat. And so we've been fortunate enough to do it, I guess, 3 of the years at one of our players' lake house, or actually my coach 1 year and then a player the other year. But just to get the varsity guys together, and actually I include anybody that's going to be on varsity, because sometimes with football guys we might have some young guys up. But just to be able to get away as a group, kind of away from the noise and the distractions, and hang out for a weekend. Usually we go out sometime in the afternoon and then come back the next evening. So it's really just a one-night deal, but it kind of allows us to have some fun together outside of basketball, break bread together, get around and talk about some things. We usually do a campfire or something, and we just get to know each other better. I mean, I know a lot of times you assume that the guys know each other, but, just talking about family, how many siblings, something interesting about you that we don't know, and just try to get to know the teammates to get to know each other better, us as coaches to be able to get to know our players better. And I think that's just been a great thing, just to be able to build those relationships better, which I think leads to the culture. If we all trust each other, we know each other, we kind of know each other's story a little bit. I think it allows us to build more trust and to know that, hey, maybe someone went through something similar to me and we can help each other out, and just to build that from the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think players learning about the shared experiences that they have. That's really cool, especially when you didn't know. And you're right on the money. I think especially with phones and everything that they have to do throughout the day, they're either looking down at their phone or they're going just from class to class. And then basketball, we hit the floor and we're running. So the ability just to really sit, disconnect from all the noise and get to know each other, that it is hard to do that in a regular setting or even a locker room setting.
Yeah, and before I came to PCA, I'd do that a lot more through maybe like to team dinner, maybe after practice, just asking them questions and having us huddle up and talk through a certain question about getting to know you, kind of like some of the things you would do as a teacher to start the year. But I think it's really important to get to know each other better and just know each other's story. I think that helps, and also what you're trying to do with basketball. What's your ultimate goal with the game? And I think if we all kind of know that, we can help each other better to reach those goals.
Is there maybe one question that you really love to ask on these retreats that always you kind of, you're wondering, like, we want to get to know them, we want to hear about siblings and things, but this one question usually you learn the most about them from?
Well, I think what's gotten some of the best answers as far as just really digging in is just something that is interesting about you that we don't know. And that can go all over the place. And, I've had a player that was kind of a bruiser that said he likes to write poetry, and like, who would have thought?
Good for him for sharing that.
Like that. Guys that played guitar that we didn't even know they played guitar. And I know that doesn't really apply to the court, but I think it does in the sense that, it kind of just builds that camaraderie and allows you to just build those relationships and deeper than what you would if you didn't do those things. Like you said, you just come into practice a lot of times and you just don't get to know each other to the depth that you probably should sometimes. So
if your culture is only about basketball, only about how to practice the right way, what type of style that you want to play, if it's only about that, I think it's pretty shallow, and it won't be something that leaves a long lasting mark with your players. But when you get to who they are as people and help them to connect in different ways, I think those questions like that, I mean, that is culture, and it will, like the teams that love each other, I think are able to pull together, get a little bit farther when things are tough, are able to kind of come together better. So yeah, I think you're right on the money with the questions like that.
Yeah, and I know that this year, each year I've gotten to where I, pick a theme. I didn't used to do that as a head coach, but now I'm kind of, I think it's important. I don't think it's necessary to win, but I think it can help just to kind of have a focal point. And our school usually picks a scripture every year that they, for the school year. And so I've kind of always tried to use that.
Yeah.
And so we spend some time, talking about that scripture. Like this year, it's Romans 12:2, and then how that kind of can apply to our team and what that looks like for us as teammates and us as, going through the ups and downs of a season, how we can apply that. So that's another thing that I think is really important, and just to kind of have that common theme throughout the year that we can pull off of to pour in our players, for even character and off the court things.
Yeah. Okay, Coach, what is one thing that myself or a lot of people don't know about you?
Wow. Well, I guess one thing that always comes to mind is I have been to Russia 3 times for sports ministry trips. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did not know that. Yeah, 3 times.
So like in my early to mid 20s, I took 3 trips over there, Moscow area, south of there, and spent a week to 10 days each time. And so I had some really interesting experience being over there, just in that country, and just the differences and the travel, just some of the, one year it was right after September 11th, and just navigating, flying through Paris and all the security and just all the different things that you run through, and obviously going through the airport in Russia, and just dealing with some of the, things you have to go through with visas and things there to be in the country as a tourist, but maybe doing ministry.
Yeah.
So,
would you go back if you could?
I would, if I had something like that I was doing. I would love to go to St. Petersburg someday, just from the history of World War II and things like that. I enjoy that part of history, and that's obviously a pivotal part of the World War II history. So I would like to go there someday, but I don't know. I don't have any plans.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Biology. What's your BSA score? The Biology Skill Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NIA and NJCAA to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 10-minute, 100-shot test can be taken for free today on the Biology mobile app. Elevate your game. What's the best thing that you borrowed lately?
Well, I was thinking about this, and I think because I've used it so much this year already, it's a drill that actually I've always admired Villanova's footwork and just the way that their guards are so good at getting in the paint and pivoting and shot faking.
Yeah.
And so my assistant coach this year, Jody Bass, who has quite a bit of experience.
I did not know Coach Bass was with you.
Yeah.
That's big time.
Him and Rick Whitmer are my 2 assistants. So I got some firepower there on the bench. And so he sent me a link just from, I think it was from the coach's toolbox. And I clicked on the video, and it was Villanova shot fake drill. And it was a video of them demonstrating. It wasn't Villanova, it was another college doing it in a clinic. But that's something that we've used because it works on first step. It works on catching ready to shoot. First step, getting into the paint, jumps, shot fakes, and then pivoting and passing out and filling in behind, and all the things that we want our guys to do. But sometimes I think we neglect it. We want them to do it, but we don't drill it. And so
yeah,
this drill does all of it. It's got a little bit of thinking involved too, of where you rotate to each time. So I like it to start practice even before we stretch, just to maybe even go 75%, make sure their footwork's great. I always tell them, it doesn't matter if you didn't travel, if it looks like a travel, it's a travel. So we just try to make sure that their footwork is great and that they're not getting called for travels and those silly turnovers. So
Yep.
I've used that a lot, and I literally just put that in this year, and it's been great.
We describe it a little bit of the organization and maybe the patterns that you go through?
Yeah, basically there's a coach at the top with a ball. There's a guy in the corner, and then there's a line up top. And the first guy penetrates, and he's going to kick, and then jump stop, shot fake. You can mix it up where you have them shot fake or you have them just jump stop and pivot. You can obviously have them do different things, but then he fills the other corner, and then that second guy drives, kicks, and then there's eventually the guy will drive, kick back to the next guy in line, and then he goes. And so it's just a continual drill. The coach eventually hits the next guy, and then he's going. So there's I guess you'll make 3 passes, and then you become the shooter. And usually the shooter is we either catch and shoot 3, or we have that guy drive and shot fake and then do a step through or some sort of finish at the rim. So you're getting basically 3 drives and then a shot at the end.
You said something really smart that I think I've felt before, and I know other coaches have, is you're in the middle of the game and they travel on the perimeter, or they don't attack the paint the way that you want. They don't chill when I like that term of, and when you get to the paint, chill, relax, with either using a dynamic jump stop and some type of fake just to slow yourself down. When they don't do those things, we yell about it, and we even tell our bench and give them the reminder. But in the moment, it's, if you haven't drilled it or put in the timer, it's not an expectation that's been put in the moment. That's just, I think that's what I think that frustrates players, is to be told something in the moment that they have to be doing, but it hasn't been drilled. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're right on the money there.
Yeah, I think that was something that I had to learn as a coach, that I would find myself saying the same thing over and over again to players, and then I thought, well, why aren't they? Well, I'm not teaching them, and so it doesn't matter if I know it. It matters if my players can know it and execute it. So we can know everything we want them to do, but if we're not giving them the repetition and the tools, we can't expect them to know what we know after 20 years of coaching or playing all the years that we played. I think sometimes we forget the process that we had to go through and learn. And so I think coaches have to slow down sometimes. We see the end product we want and we try to speed to it, but we don't take the time to do the tedious work. And I think players are guilty of that and coaches are guilty of that.
What's really tough too is when you're a player as good as you are still, if in your head you think, golly, I could do that better right now. And in your case, you're probably right. But no comeback there.
I not feel that way all the time. I'm like, well, maybe a few years ago I could.
Yeah. Throw a good no look pass in there.
Yeah. Some zone work.
Work. That's an inside joke that we're not gonna let anybody know about. So that's what Michael Scott said. I love inside jokes. I want to be a part of one someday.
Yeah.
And but I think we got to be careful or be mindful of our drill selection as coaches, like what we choose to put into our practice plan, because if you're not an offense that really values getting to the paint, and like what Villanova does is they don't just jump stop there, they also Barkley, and they turn and they keep their dribble alive, and they have the spacing around the perimeter that really encourages that. So that drill wouldn't really work, or I wouldn't find a lot of value in that. But looking at my old practice plans, how many things that I have in them that look great, saw it at a clinic, The video is awesome. Play at a college and a coach that I love to watch, but it really doesn't it doesn't apply. Like, we don't shoot off of curls ever. We're standstill off of a kick out from the paint or a one more or off the dribble, but we don't shoot off a curl. So like any type of shooting curl work for me, that drill is useless as far as how we play. I think we got to be mindful of that.
Right. Yeah. I think, yeah, definitely. Just even every offense, whatever it is, whether it's pick and roll or pick and pop, just doing the shooting and almost doing it out of your offense,
Yep.
creating a drill where you're shooting out of the exact spots that you're going to be getting in the game. It just makes sense. I mean, it seems simple, but so many times we do drills where we don't shoot the shots or the spots that we're going to be getting in the games. And so I think at some point when we used to run more motion, we developed motion shooting, and Matt Wester, who coached with me, he did a good job of teaching that and just making it just like the offense, and giving them all the different options and all the different shots that we would get out of that, and doing that shooting drill before practice at the beginning of practice. So I think that's really important.
I think too that and you kind of nailed it, make your skill work, take apart offensively what you do. And when coaches talk about skill work, it needs to be a big part of practice, or, Coach Mills at Oral Roberts says it's 50% of what they do in practice. I think a lot of people think, man, that 2-ball and, some cones and some med balls, like that's 50%. No, like skill work it's getting shots up, but a lot of times it's off of the actions that you want. And so I think that's a really good reminder. The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. What is one quality that you see in leaders that coaches need to cultivate in their own habits?
Whenever I was thinking about this, I think consistency is probably one of the most important things, and that's as a coach, as a player. I think even in the if you're in the corporate world, whatever, for a player, I think it looks like being on time, having the same energy every day. I think about the players that I played with that were great leaders. They had a consistency about them that was it was so reliable that you could trust them, that you could follow them. And so I think, as a coach, as a player, if you want to be a great leader, you have to model that, and you have to be that every day. And so we all have days we don't want to, come in, and especially as a player, I think because of the physical aspect of it, there's days where you just don't feel good. You don't feel as energetic. And those are the days you got to grind and earn that leadership status. And, you can't really take a day off. And so I think as coaches that I've worked for, from Coach Quigley at Naaman to Coach Thomas, coaches that I played for, Coach Sagona, Coach Riesman at Tarleton State. I mean, all of them were very consistent in their approach and very consistent in what they demanded of us. There wasn't a lot of confusion in what the expectations were. And so whenever I think of leadership, I think of consistency, like making it clear, not being all over the place with your expectations, and then modeling those expectations of the way that you pour into your team and putting in the extra time. We ask our players to be consistent in their work ethic. Well, am I being consistent in my work ethic and the way that I prepare and the way that I, get them ready for their games, and prepare practice plan and prepare, film or whatever it is that we need to do to help us win. So I think that consistency is really important.
Yeah, I've known you for, again, we've said 15 years, and been able to watch you as a coach, as a player, and then also, as a father, and then the family man that you are. And I do believe that you're one of the most, I'm sure you've had a bad day or two the last 15 years. I just haven't I haven't seen it, or I haven't really felt it or noticed it, where some people you can really, you can see it, you can hear it in their speech, you can maybe see it in their actions, or how they approach things. What is it about you? I'm gonna dive in a little bit more into you. What is it about you that just makes you so consistent?
Well, I think number one, it's my faith. Just being a Christian, being a Christ follower. Like I feel like we have to, if we're going to live that out daily. Not that we don't have struggles, we don't have highs and lows, we don't have things that happen to us, but when we have that faith and that peace that rests in our relationship with God, I think that it's a little bit easier to be consistent and maybe not panic, not just overreact to things, and to maybe realize that there's a purpose in the struggle. And there's so many things that are out of our control on a daily basis that if we overreact to those things, I just think it shows a lack of faith and trust. And so I don't know. I mean, there's definitely times I get angry, and you've seen that on the court. I think probably in the competitive realm is where I've struggled the most. I'm sure there's some referees out there, if they hear this, they'd be like, "Man, Coach Clarkson really gave it to me, a time or two." But even in that, I've tried to get better. When I play, when I coach, to keep that competitive fire like under control to where it doesn't affect my thought process,
And it doesn't damage the mission, your
Right.
mission and what you represent.
Right. No question. And I think on the court is probably where I've struggled the most with that, to be who I know God wants me to be and who I want to be, a light for others. And on the court has been some of the times where I've probably tarnished that, just getting into that competitive fire and letting it get the emotions get the best of me a few times. So
I mean, I can't think of any examples that come to mind that.
well,
But
you gave me a clip of our Baylor
that's right.
matchup where you claim I pushed you in the back, but
That's
was
the only way you could have taken that rebound from me, is if and how did I end up on the floor just out of nowhere? But that was our first interaction, wasn't it?
well, I met you when you were in high school. Actually, I came over with Coach Quigley to pick up Metrocrest jerseys at the Colony High School, and you happened to be in the locker room. And I wasn't far removed from college, so I kind of knew the players and enjoyed watching basketball, and so I knew who the top recruits were in the area, and
You
so
thought you could take me instantly when you saw me. You thought,
well,
he's not
you were
special.
pretty jacked in high school, man. I think you had a big bottle of something up there, like some energy powder, protein.
Advocare, Coach Thomas sold us. It was POS2, and it had protein and creatine in it. So when we showed up to play Louisville the next year, they all were asking us like, "What are you guys doing?" Because we were all pretty jacked. And what a great Coach Thomas. That was brilliant. Like, you have a built-in clientele, your own players that you're selling Advocare products
Well,
to.
speaking of Coach Thomas, I stayed with Coach Thomas last weekend. Went down to the Auburn A&M game to watch my nephew play. He plays for Auburn, and we spent the night with Coach T and Joyce and the four dogs, and it was
Nice.
so we talked about you a little bit.
Huh.
Just the good times, man, the good times. So yeah, we're definitely that circle. That's one thing we can talk about is just relationships. I mean,
Yeah.
who would have thought, if you look at that whole story of how you ended up with me, and then me even ended up with Coach Thomas that year coaching. I mean, there's just so many things that, me being down there playing you guys at Baylor in that exhibition game, and, he and I interacting. And so, yeah, that all comes back to you because he was there to watch you. So we're all, it's crazy.
The keystone.
Yeah.
Keystone.
It's crazy how life works.
It is. It is. But I think it's all Coach Thomas's coaching tree, which, I mean, it's pretty cool to see that really grow, and blessed to be a part of his, even as a player, but a part of his tree.
Yeah.
One thing you said, I do think it's such a difficult line for anybody. I mean, obviously for believers, but even for non-believers, is to balance that competitive fire that you have without letting it, spill over. I think it's Doc Rivers said, like, how competitive can you be while maintaining your discipline?
Mm-hmm.
And I know as a player it's really hard to do, but then as a coach, it's really hard to do. But then when you have the value system that we have, there's just it's almost like the ultimate out of bounds or check or marker to keep us, in check. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think, I've literally found myself on Sunday night driving up to play in the men's league, just saying a little prayer, God, let me represent you well. Just keep my composure. It's not, when you really think about it, it's even with our high school games, there's nothing worth compromising your integrity and your character. And sometimes that competitiveness just can take us to that edge. So I think keeping it in perspective, I know Coach Thomas said this weekend. He said, when I got out of coaching, I couldn't believe that everybody didn't just hang on all my games and even know if we won or lost, because he doesn't even know when we win or lose half the time, since he's not coaching anymore. And so it gave him a perspective, right? Where when he was in the midst of it, it's like everything weighed on that game and whether they won or lost in our career. And
Yeah,
I think we can have that bigger perspective and, what we're really trying to do with our jobs, especially being leaders of young men, to make sure that we're holding that ourselves to a high standard.
my first year at Faith, we shot the ball pretty well back in 13, 14. Shot the ball pretty well and broke some records. And I started to look. And then the next year we came back and we hit 432 threes in that year. And I just thought, this is incredible. It's like, I looked at the NFHS records and it was like top 10 all time in the history of high school sports, like our team up there. And then I looked, like, we've got about 8 other records that we're eligible for. So I printed out all the paperwork and I filled it all out, sent it in and waited like by my computer. And a month later, I got a response from NFHS saying, because you're not recognized in public school and by NFHS, we can't honor any of your records.
Oh, wow.
And it was just this moment of, God, like, this doesn't matter. Like, I was so caught up in maybe a little bit of me and what this could look like and legacy and all that stuff. But what a great, kick in whatever to remind myself, like, it's not about how many threes we hit, how many wins, but really about those relationships. Because I think at that point, if I look back at those early teams, I lost sight of that a little bit. Of it was more about what could we do statistically rather than, will these guys invite me to their wedding one day, and what will they take away from basketball more than just becoming more efficient shooters.
Right. And I think that was one of the things that one of the questions was, what would I do different? Like, one thing I would do different if I could go back. And I think it's spending more time. I think especially as a young head coach, you're so focused and maybe feeling a little pressure that, this is my chance to prove that what I do works. And even though so many things are out of your control, not to take that ownership of that off you, but in high school basketball, there's just so many things that are out of our control. And, taking the time, maybe even at the expense of being on the court as much, to really dig in with your players, whether it be one-on-one meetings, team dinners, taking time just to enjoy each other a little more than just grinding every day, although that's important and that builds a bond as well. But just to spend more time, and making it more of a priority to spend that one-on-one time with your players, to get to know them better, to, ask them their thoughts sometimes. I think sometimes especially when you're younger as a coach, you just want to tell them how it is. And I think I've gotten to where hopefully my players would say that I ask them and listen to them and want their input, and that they would feel comfortable in the right setting telling me, hey, coach, what about this? What about this? And so I think that's the one thing I would do different, for sure.
Yeah. One thing about perspective and kind of our talk keeps revolving around that, is keeping perspective. You gave me this nugget years and years ago. I think I asked you, what's the toughest thing about coaching or high school coaching? And you said it's because you're competitive. Your success as a coach, winning and losing, it rests a lot on 15, 16, and 17-year-olds, and just sometimes the frustration with that feeling and everything. But how have you been able to deal with that over the years? Because even in college, I mean, they're young men. Most of them come for the reason of playing basketball, and they have aspirations further than that. But this high school thing is, you get an interesting blend of kids that just want to be a part of a team, love basketball, like it, hopefully, and have just always played. And then you've got a couple that you can dangle that carrot of they want to play after. But when your success revolves around, as far as just wins and losses, what those 15, 16, 17-year-olds do, how have you grown or gotten better at handling that?
Well, I think that's kind of goes to the struggle sometimes when great players maybe don't make great coaches, is because their whole their approach to the game, they expect every player to have that, right? And I think, I think I kind of thought that. I thought, well, every player that plays basketball in high school was the same way I was, who wanted to stay in the gym until coach made me leave or turn the lights out. And then I remember at our 10-year reunion, I was talking to for our basketball team, because we went to the state championship. So our coaches had a 10-year reunion, and it was great to get together. But one of the guys was like, man, when I was in high school, I just kind of was wanting to go, and he rode horses and took care of horses. He's like, I just want to get over there and take care of my horse. And I was like, really? Like, I didn't even know that there was on our team like that. And so I think as a coach, you have to realize there's all different. It really takes all those different types of players to win. And maybe not everybody's going to be pouring as much time, but there is a role for them, whether it's making us better as a practice player, grinding us every day, or I think that just understanding that teams are always going to have that type of dynamic, especially at the high school level, and that giving them value with a role is really important. And I think that goes back to the conversations and the relationships, is that, not to just let them figure out their role all the time, but that does happen sometimes, but to try to give them their roles and identify those roles and what they can really bring to the table. And so I think giving them a role and helping them to understand that and how they can help the team can kind of bridge that a little bit.
Yeah, because it's our profession, but it's their game.
Right.
And for some of us, it goes from a game that we've loved since we were 9 to being the thing that it becomes our profession. But a lot of them, like the horse riding guy, he was just thinking of doing other things. So keeping that in mind, we have to have that balance of teaching and coaching in a way that will further the growth and the career of those players that do have maybe the same aspirations as us, but then respecting the fact. And it just, maybe this story popped in my head of my year with you at Naaman, and I'm blanking on the kid's name, but he was a senior. He wore goggles or glasses. Maybe, I can't remember a number, maybe 32 or something, but I was in that mode of, hey, this isn't going to work in college. Guys, what you're doing right now, it's not going to work at the next level. And I don't know how many times I used that phrase, next level. And finally, the kid was like, Coach, I don't want to play at the next level. And it just, as a 25-year-old, it floored me. Like, what are you doing here? Like, what's the point? But I think most of us, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's probably like 25% next level, 75%. Coach, I don't want to do that. I've got other things I'm interested in. So we have to respect, and this has taken me 14 years to 15 years to get to this point, respect the fact that they have other interests, but then become creative in your practices and how you spend your time and what you do, to where that it's meaningful for them.
Yeah, because we do need doctors and lawyers and other professions, engineers. Like, I don't think we can just have basketball coaches, unfortunately. So, but yeah, I think, I think a lot of that goes back to the coach, right? Giving value to every player. And I think that we're all guilty at times of pouring more time and effort into our, best players. And so I think that goes back to that thing I learned, and hopefully that I do better now, is to try to pour into every kid and not neglect the kids who maybe have a smaller role in the team. And because again, I was just in the gym today with my team, and we put a kid on the line, for the end of practice to make a shot. And it's like, he's got to be able to make that. What if that's him, at the end of a game, making that shot, even though he doesn't shoot a lot, to win a game, and so we got to make sure that we're pouring into those guys and giving them the same attention.
Yeah, man, just when you said that, making those free throws at the end of games, one thing, this completely changes directions, but it has to do with giving players those opportunities, putting them in those opportunities. One thing we do in pickup during the spring and summer is anytime they play, they have to cap the win. So if I score the winning bucket for my team, I have to go to the free throw line. If I miss it, the score goes back 1 point, and it's the other team's ball, and we continue play. So you stamp your win. That's what it is. You stamp your win. I don't know why not do that now in practice. So every game that you play, whether it's something full court, whether it's a 3-on-3, 4-on-4, or 5-on-5, and you're just working on different aspects. Like we have a game called Kill, where you've got to get 3 stops in a row, or even you got to have 3 makes in a row. Why not have that kid that scores stamp the win? So because you're working on the pressure free throw, but then also reacting if there's a miss. I don't know. I might start doing that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, I love trying to create those situations in practice, because that's the one thing about free throws in particular, is it's really hard to recreate that feeling that you would have at the line in a big situation. And so, any of those shooting drills where you can put time and, maybe in a row or a certain makes and so much time to meet a score, they feel that pressure. I think in a row is a big one.
Yeah, man.
I know when I've done it and had my players do it, I feel like having to make so many in a row at a spot puts a feeling of that pressure that you might feel on a big shot in a game.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think we have to look at any shooting that you do. There's a time for volume, but I think the time for volume is in the spring and summer on their own, or maybe strategically put in a practice or after weights or something. But I don't know. Again, percentages, maybe 90% to 10%, 90% in a rows where there's time, there's a score that they have to get to, because the 2 reasons why shooters miss in games is they practice too slow and they practice without pressure. And to think that as coaches, that if we just tell them, guys, you got to practice fast, you got to practice with pressure. Okay. They're going to go do that immediately. No, naturally we want to be comfortable. And so I think anytime we're talking about shooting, man, we have to create that type of pressure. So that's a good reminder, man.
Yeah, those time shooting drills and giving them a mark, and the in a row I love. I mean, I started doing that. I used to train some kids shooting, and I used to use 3 in a row a lot. Maybe if I was doing a certain drill with them that they had to make 3 in a row, sometimes it was 5. But I think that just puts a little bit of that pressure on them. And I love the capping the win. I actually I got that from some of the pro runs that I was doing up at Prestonwood. They wanted to do that one day, and I loved it, because I think the first time we did it was like 3 misses before they won. And, these are guys that are playing for money.
Yeah.
So, and there was some pressure. Like, you could tell that they were feeling the pressure to make that shot. And so it works. I mean, it really does.
Speaking of shooting, what's your favorite shooting game?
Well, I may have gotten this from you, at least the times and the amounts, but the Celtic 50.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. Keep going with the 50 part.
We do the 5 spots. You got to make 10 from each spot, and you got 4 minutes, and you got to get 90 attempts or 50 makes. If you don't get 90 attempts, then your score doesn't get recorded. So if you're doing, it's a lot. Like we get guys, a lot of our guys can get 90. We got quite a few that can make 50 pretty easily.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like you were talking about, some of our really good shooters, that one doesn't test them as much because they know they're going to make 50. So it's kind of, they tend to slow down a little bit.
Yeah. Or you could even, you see, you can't allow them to slow down.
Right.
That's what they'll do. They'll slow down to think that if I focus a little bit more and take my time, I'll make more. But it's Tyler Costin, when I had him on here, said it's speed first.
Yeah.
So anything you can get, speed first.
There were some great notes in that, because I actually started really emphasizing more of the attempts, because when you watch kids, there's just some that are never going to get a shot off.
Yep.
And if you can't get your shot off, what point is it to even work on it?
Yeah.
You might as well work on driving.
Yeah, it's just a great reminder to tell shooters, hey, I know you made that, but it's literally your preparation and your speed is at a point where there's going to be a level that you can't move past. There's going to be a level of defender athleticism that shot won't work for.
Yeah, and sometimes at the lower levels, because I get one great thing about Prestonwood is I get to work with my younger guys a lot, even down to the middle school. Just the way we kind of structure things. So especially those younger guys, it's like, hey, you made that, but that shot's not going to work, or that, approach and that footwork isn't going to work. You got to do these things just to get better. And that way they're ready for the level that they want to get to. And then the other one is, we call it green light shooting, but it's kind of a, it does take the speed part. You have to have the speed part, because you can't score a high score if you don't, but you make 2 in a row from the 5 spots. So corner, wing, top, corner, wing, corner. And you have to make 2 in a row at each spot. You got 2 minutes. And once you're done with that, you get 2 points for each of those spots. You get the rest of the time to make as many as you can from one spot. Like you don't have to move. And so if you make those 2 in a row quick, you got a lot of time to knock down shots. And if you're consistent, you're going to rack up the points, and all those makes on the back end are 1 point. And so,
we call that Beal shooting. And I think that's one of our magnet, that games that we play, where if they win it that day, they get a little magnet that has Bradley Beal on it, and we put it on their locker. They love those magnets. What's your
score on that to get that magnet?
The highest in the gym.
Oh, okay.
That day. So every shooting game needs to be either charted. If you're charting, like green, yellow, red for us is a game. It's a lot like your Celtic 50, green, yellow, red for us, and we chart that every day. But then every other game, when we come in after it, the scores and hands are raised. And because one, you want them, if they do well, acknowledging that, but it's role identification. Every time that my hand goes down, but this guy's hand is always up, or I hear his score. So we had a Beal the other day of, I think, like 26, which, that means he got the 10 points for the 5 spots and then 16 bonus shots. Like, that's a great score. But if I'm sitting there like I was at 7, or I was at 6, if I'm kind of open, all right, he should really get the ball. So I think there's a big part of those games. And then, but I like that. I like those.
Yeah. Well, I do a shooting camp every summer, and actually 2 of them, but I always have them come and tell me their scores, and I keep them for the week. And so they can see their improvement throughout the week. And we do those games, and then we do the same ones every day so that they can see the improvement. And a lot of it is the speed, the tempo, just getting more attempts. And obviously when you got to make 2 in a row, the accuracy matters, but it's really good for them to see that they're improving. I think that builds their confidence. But like you said, from a team standpoint, identifying the shooters is not only important for us as coaches, but it's also important for the team and for them to be able to, like you said, if I'm standing next to the best shooter on the team and I'm a little open and he's, open on the next pass, I could shoot it, but it's better to kick it to him, and to play the percentages. So
yeah, if you're ever struggling with shot selection, one, I think early on I didn't have it defined clearly with my players in a way that's not personal to them, because shot selection is personal, and if you're using words like good or bad or great or okay, that's not your shot, things like that. I think that's really harmful. But if you're not tracking and having measuring sticks often, to where you get to really, the players get to know where the majority of shots could go. It allows you as a coach to justify why he's getting 15 threes a game and you're maybe getting 1 or 2. And then even that dreaded parent talk of why isn't my kid shooting more? You actually have data instead of, I just haven't seen him make it. No. Here, come look at our chart. Or just even those conversations within your teams. I think that's huge.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, at the end of the day, I tell my guys, like, the stats speak a lot. They give us a lot of information, and if we just wait till the games, it plays out. But you're 10 games in before you start to see that really, where you can really measure it. And so I think having those scores on the shooting, and even tracking, like I always try to keep stats when we play in shootouts in the fall, because it starts to show them some of that shot selection and, hey, if you're shooting this percentage, maybe you need to pick better shots, so I think the more data, the better in that case for shot selection.
And if you're dealing with inner rows or speed, trying to get them quicker with their preparation, that's when you see the mental side of it come through.
Yeah.
Because if you have guys that are just shooting comfortably, most likely they'll never break. You'll never see them throw the ball off the wall or punt it or droop. And that's where you come over, because at the higher levels, it's not so much about form, anything funky, of course, but it's more about what's in between their ears, the mental side of shooting, of that leather touches your fingertips, it's out, and then it's done. And you have that selective amnesia to where I don't think about that shot anymore, and I just prepare for the next one. But again, I don't think you get to that point or see that much in your players unless you're charting, playing games, getting away from, all right, now we're just going to get 50 shots up. Why not make it a game? Why not chart it? Why not have them come in and have to say it to each other? I don't know.
Yeah, and it has created some situations in our practice where, a kid is missing early in those drills and maybe does give up a little bit on it, or just starts to mentally cave, and they forget that that it's a simple process. I mean, not that shooting's easy, because obviously if it was, there wouldn't be, guys getting paid millions and millions of dollars to do it. But there is an approach that's going to help you when you're struggling. Like, there's some things that you need to go to, kind of like your blanket, like as a kid, if you have a blanket you slept with, like you need that safety blanket to be able to help you go to sleep. And as a shooter, that's whether it's your hand position, your pocket, your follow through, your feet, you got to have some go-to things to help you get through those little patches. And, I think those drills really help with that, to help your players develop those little keys. And for each player, it might be a little different. There might be a little different cue that they need that helps them get back on track. But I know just for myself, like I usually miss short. So I just always tell myself, like, get it to the back of the rim. Like on the next miss, at the next shot, hopefully not the next miss, the next shot, like I'm getting it to the back, and that holding your follow through, whatever. But I think each player has to kind of have some triggers, and I think we can help them when they're in those tense.
I like that idea. The cues part or triggers. I don't think I think when we're watching our players shoot, we're obviously looking for the things that we want. We want them all 6 inches off the line, like not even near the line. Don't flirt with the line. Those are simple things to see. But I like the idea of knowing your players' shots so well that when they are struggling or missing a couple, you have that cue ready specifically for them, not just a blanket statement that you would say to anybody. I think we should know our players' shots that well.
Yeah, like the player I had on the line today, he shoots flat. So just as simple as getting your elbow up, and just finishing that follow through above your eye, your elbow above your eye. That's what I tell him. So, and he made it. So
it worked out.
Yeah, but doesn't always work that way. But I think, yeah, you should know your players' shots, and I know not every coach maybe, and I think over time, even though I was a shooter as a player, really understanding what made me successful, or diving into the intricacies of shooting the ball. I mean, I did that more as I was coaching, and I wish I'd done it more as a player, because I think I would have had less rough patches. But I think that we need to be mindful of that, because shooting is such a big part of it. Like, you should be paying attention to maybe how it's coming off their fingers, and does it have good rotation on it? I mean, every coach should be paying attention to those things and helping their players develop those consistent habits.
Coaches, the one thing that every team needs is confident shooters. The last 8 years at Grapevine Faith, our teams have averaged 354 made threes each season. I love getting to share with coaches how our shooters train, and more importantly, how they think. If you would like to enhance your shooting culture at your school, contact me directly at jamodipodcast@gmail.com. You mentioned earlier about being consistent as a leader, as a coach, in the habits that you have and the standards that you've set. Because I think a frustrating thing for players is not knowing what the expectations are, or them being different from day to day. And so what are some of there's so many ways to say it, standards, expectation, non-negotiables of your program?
Well, I think, I always had this in my programs. I think that, being in public school for as long as I was, I mean, 9 years at Naaman and 6 years as head coach at Plano East, and being in the public school realm, I mean, I always carried my faith into that, right? And so I always wanted my players to, when I thought about, okay, what do I really want my players to be? I know I'm trying to help them with their basketball careers and to be the best basketball players they can be. But, more than anything, I want them to be great husbands and great fathers one day. And so, and be able to have a great career and job if it's not in the basketball side. So I think, those same habits that would make you successful in that realm, like we talked about, being on time, being reliable. It's not okay just to not show up or not communicate if something's going on. I think just that consistency, like we talked about earlier, and that can look, obviously being on time and showing up without, I guess, that energy level being consistent. And the book, The Energy Bus, it talks about, I like the term energy vampires, and just, you don't never want guys who come in and just suck the air out of the gym. And so I know everyone's going to have bad days from time to time, but just to be there and be consistent. And, obviously being at PCA, even right behind me, this is a little office room that we use for meetings, but pursue Christ always. And so what does that look like? Well, as teammates, that means that we're treating each other with respect. And I think a big part of that is that we're encouraging each other. We're not tearing each other down. And that doesn't just go for when we're together, but when you're at the lunchroom, when you're around your friends and you're talking to other people, you're building your teammates up. You're never tearing them down. And so if anything like that ever comes to the forefront where we know about it, I mean, we address it. And I think that's another thing, is just keep holding them to a high standard in that regard, and then addressing and confronting those things when they start to slip are really important. And so the non-negotiables, I mean, there's definitely things. I mean, being at PCA, our kids are held to a very high standard just in the school in general, whether it be social media or the way that they are expected to behave off the court, outside of the school, in the school, but also just on the court with us. I guess respecting the game is the term I like to use, and I've always heard if the ball's loose, diving on it, doing all the little things, and just being a great teammate in the way that you respect the game, and the way that you interact with coaches, officials, not coming off the court, pulling your jersey out, not protesting with body language. Those are just some of the things I think about when I think about the culture and the things that we try to address if it ever happens, because those things are never going to build a championship program.
Yeah.
And if we allow those things to go on and not confront them, I think it's going to eventually bite us, and it's going to hurt us. And so those are some of the things that I don't know if that's all over the place, but those are some of the things that I think are really important to us.
I think those non-negotiables, the culture you're talking about, does lead to winning and championship habits. But one thing you said it a couple of times, you said address it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really key, regardless of what player it is. How many times are we feel hesitant to address it, one of our better players, for something that they're doing that goes against our culture, or are we more likely to hit it hard to the players that are 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 on the bench? Like, we have to have that standard, or the environment where the players know our expectations, and regardless of who you are, how much playing time or what you can do on the floor, you'll be held to the same standards. Maybe difficult at the beginning, but over the long haul, it'll come back to, like, instead of biting you, I think it'll come back to help you win.
Oh yeah, and I think just thinking about the players that do want to play at that next level, I think it's a disservice to them if we don't. They may be the best player on our team, but they may not be in college, and so we can't let them get away with things that would never be acceptable, and really help them to be successful at the next level. And those same things are going to help our team win and help our team, stay together, because those things that we just talked about tend to tear at the fabric of your unity as a group, and create a lot of animosity. And obviously the way the coach handles it, and being transparent about, and like you said, consistent no matter who it is, that's key, because everybody's watching.
Yeah.
The kids are watching, and they get it. I mean, they know when you're letting someone off the hook. So I think that consistency.
Yeah, you lose that credibility real quick.
No doubt.
When you do that. And I think too, I never want to come off of just bashing select ball or AAU ball, because there's really good coaches in that world that truly want the best for their players, and do run strong programs that have non-negotiables, that have standards that are in place. But it does feel like at times, and the beauty of high school basketball to me is you're getting not just the people that, from the same environment, same city, or around the same place, but they're with each other every day, but they have different aspirations and the different backgrounds. And through that, they have to figure out a way to work together to be one unit. But for that to happen, it's what we're talking about, is everybody being held to the same standard. But if you're a player and you're coming from another program that, because you're so good or because there were no standards, and it's hard for the player to switch it on and off. So I think it's important for coaches also to realize or to meet the players where they're at, understand where they're coming from. And if there is a struggle for a player to get on board, it might not be that they're just a turd, that they're just a punk. It might be that this is what has been allowed. And now for their good, for their own good, and for the betterment of the team, we need them moving in this direction.
Yeah, and I think, obviously depending on where you coach and the kids that you're coaching, I mean, you may be the one person that's holding them accountable. You may be I've coached in a lot of different, schools, and, had different kids and some with, great parents, some who didn't have much parental guidance at home. And so we've got to hold kids accountable. I mean, that's our job. And that's, if we love them and care about them, it's just like my own kids. I mean, if I'm not holding them accountable and trying to help them to act the way they need to act to be successful down the road, I mean, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do as a parent or a coach. So I think sometimes we let winning get in the way of that, and especially as high school coaches. I mean, man, we can never let that get in the way of doing the right thing for the kid. And maybe sometimes that's hard. That's sitting them for a game, or disciplining them. And hopefully that's a lesson that will steer them the right direction, that they won't have to learn that lesson again. So
that we didn't talk about this, but I'm interested to kind of hear how you feel. What is your policy, or what have you done over the years as far as something happens either in practice or at school or even outside of school where a player needs to be disciplined? And I think you hear all the time, sat him for a quarter, sat him for a half, didn't let him play a game. But there's a part of me that's always, what I don't like about that is I'm all for disciplining a player, but I don't like hurting the other 10 or 11. And so if this is a key part of our team, and so not playing him will definitely discipline him, but the other players are also put at a distinct disadvantage, or are, in a way, they're being disciplined as well, but they didn't do anything. I've always been a little torn, because I've done it before where it kept the guy out, or I've done it before where it's been an individual consequence, but it didn't affect playing time at all. What are your thoughts on which direction?
I think some of it depends on the severity of the incident. I think sometimes games are on the table just because, of the severity of the incident or whatever happened. And coaching as long as I have, I mean, I've dealt with those situations. And, even, whether it was just like kids going to the game, having drank some alcohol, that would be a situation where maybe, being removed from the team for a time is necessary. Or, where obviously the punishment of running, or I've even had kids have to stay and clean up the lunchroom, after lunch, where they had to go around and clean up everybody's trash, because, kids aren't great at cleaning up their trash at lunch. I know that's shocking to everybody, but, there's a lot of things you can do. I like to have kids sometimes serve, like have to do something serving wise like that, where they're having to, whether it's their classmates at school or, cleaning up the trash in the cafeteria or whatever. But obviously the running, sprints, things like that, I think are better alternative to sitting in games for something more minor, like being late to practice, or, because like you said, it does punish the whole team, especially if that player's a critical part of the team in winning. I mean, and I think you have to be consistent there. So you can't sit one guy because he maybe it doesn't have as big a role, and then just have the best player run. It's got to be consistent. And I think that doing that individual, accountability, punishment, whatever you want to call it, is better than taking them out of the game. And I've always used this, let's take something like, I've dealt with this before with a couple players where they have a public display on the court, maybe being disrespectful towards a coach, myself, or an assistant, then I think that needs a public display of accountability. So in those situations, I have sat kids maybe the rest of the game and maybe even addressed it with some running or whatever later. But I think when it happens in front of the fans and in front of the parents and in front of the players, and it's all out in the open like that, that to hold everybody accountable, I think it needs to be done that way, because they won't ever know if you punish the kid, right? I mean, and that can create other issues.
Yeah.
And so I think that when I've had situations where there is some sort of public display in the middle of a game, that sometimes the game is the way it has to be dealt with because it happened in that setting.
I think that's a great point. And standards have to be held, and they have to be known by everybody in your program. Yeah. But then when they're broken, the consequences, I think it's wise to leave it up to the situation and give yourself room for grace in some situations, room to be super, strong in others. Mm-hmm. But if you have your standards set, but then also your consequences set, then you might be forced to have to stick to something that you don't feel like is best. And I'm thinking back to, I thought Coach Thomas was really good with that. He had standards for us as players and things that we knew that we had to live by or try to live by. And my senior year, we're playing at Duncanville, and Bracy Wright, who was a phenomenal player, played in the NBA for years in Indiana. Him and another teammate got in some trouble before the game and missed the bus and weren't. So we start out this game. Duncanville had 5 Division I players, and we had a few, but we're missing Bracy. He was huge for us. He didn't play the first quarter, and he was being kind of punished for that. And it was during the second quarter. Coach and I laugh about it now, but I felt comfortable enough with him to go up and say, "Hey, Coach, I think Bracy's learned his lesson, and we need him." But because he didn't have a hard, fast rule, he could say, "Yeah, I think you're right." And Bracy came back out. We ended up beating. It was the best high school game I've ever been a part of. But the whole thing to say, like, it's wise to have these standards, but then give yourself room to make judgments based on that situation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, you definitely don't want to just have I think we do that with most things, right? We kind of weigh each situation, but I know there have been coaches that just have that set thing where you miss the bus, you don't play, or whatever. You're late to the bus, you don't play. And that's tough. I mean, because like you said, that could punish the whole team to some degree. So I think it's better to have that flexibility and to take each situation, as it comes.
Well, Jeff, I know you pretty well, and a lot of people in DFW do, because you're famous here. But as a player and also as a coach, no, but honestly, people in the coaching profession, you do know you and what you stand for. But I want to know you even better. And so the speed round is going to allow me to do that.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
I'm ready as I'm going to be.
Quick questions, quick responses. Okay. Huh?
Let me sit up and get ready.
Yeah. Favorite ice cream flavor?
Chocolate.
For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
I think shot clock.
Favorite point guard to ever play with?
Matt Saman.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Invisibility or super strength?
Super strength.
Favorite childhood TV show?
Man, I used to come home and get me a Nutter Butter and eat some a Nutty Bar, whatever it was, chocolate, and watch GI Joe.
Nice.
Good times.
How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
Usually just one cup.
And it's black.
Yeah, I really didn't drink black coffee, but I've been trying it lately. I've been trying to wean myself off the creamer.
You really don't need those calories. Yeah, you really don't.
Those
But
empty calories, but are they empty? I mean, it tastes good.
yeah, Wes Watson. Well, you just listen, just
He
do what
looks-
he does.
Hey, he looks fantastic because I saw him at that golf tournament. I mean, he's just got a glow about him.
He's got to go. Well, it's his team. His team. They're about to do amazing things.
I'm glad that I don't play him anymore. I'm glad I played him when I had the division. He did.
All right, last question. Probably the most important one. Godfather or Star Wars?
Star Wars for sure.
The Force is strong with you.
I have some fond memories. You know, I remember going to see Return of the Jedi with my grandpa over in Arlington in the theater. Man, that was a highlight of my childhood right there.
Nice.
Jabba the Hutt. You know, it's good stuff.
Awesome. Well, man, we've had this friendship for a while, and I've loved getting to, coach with you and play basketball with you. But I really enjoyed getting to hear you more, kind of explaining just how you do what you do, because you've been super successful everywhere that you've been, and you're known for having high integrity and high standards. And it was really cool, and I really appreciate you sharing tonight.
Well, Matt, I've always been blown away by your ability to kind of change gears, and being a podcast interviewee or interview of you. I listen to your podcast. I mean, you're doing an awesome job, and I think it's great. I know just for me personally, like listening to them, it's helped me grow as a coach, and I know that's what your goal is. And so I love that you're doing this and pouring your time into helping coaches get better. So
I appreciate that, man.
you're great. You're great at what you do, man. I mean, the way you coach and the way you pay attention to detail and know exactly what you're about as a coach. I love it. I wish I had that. Sometimes I waver a little. I think I envy just your ability to have that style of play that you just are 100% sold to. I envy that a bit.
Well, I appreciate that. I would say that it might be, you might be wiser. You might be smarter as a coach, the fact that you're able to adjust to the players that you have that based on that year. The problem with loving a style of play or being kind of sold out to it is there might be times where I think, oh, George Barber said that from Greenville, or maybe Arsenault, one of those guys where they're talking about really running a gun. And he said, the hardest thing was there were years where I thought in a different style, we could be a little bit better or do something more. So I don't know. I do think the way we're doing things now fits our guys, but there have been years where I was too stubborn. And so appreciate that, but I don't know.
Well, I love your mind for the game, man. I think you really have a great basketball mind, and just the way you think of the game and the way you drill your guys and the way you prepare your guys. I think you're very detailed in that, and that's a great thing as a coach.
Well, it's all about the coaches that you've worked for and who's taught you. So anything that
plans were very detailed.
Anything that you see, it came from you. It came from Wes and Coach Thomas in a way. Coach Bliss and Coach Drew were all a product of those guys. So
nothing will help you grow like being in the portable at Naaman Forest High School teaching ESL. Was it
ESL reading out there with my students? Silent sustained reading was my favorite time of the day. 45 minutes But you know what did grow out there was the Jamodi skill rating test that I've done here now we started it back then. We did it at McKinney all of my years there, and we've done it here. So 14 years of testing players. That came from the chalkboards of the portable at Naaman Forest.
Wow.
I was that bored that day that I thought I need a way to test players, not just their athleticism like the combine does or NFL test, but also their skill, because we are a combination of the three. That came from Naaman Forest, man.
I do. I think somewhere deep in my emails I have that. So,
That'd be nuts.
When we were thinking about doing our website, you probably remember all that. So
Yep.
but yeah. Well, I appreciate it, Matt.
Thanks, man. Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.